share with you the results of what I had mentioned at our January meeting would be a continued effort to articulate how our vision is evolving, a long-term vision, and in particular to lay out a set of priorities for this upcoming year. I recently had the great pleasure of visiting Chateau Estates Elementary School in Kenner in Jefferson Parish, where I was joined by about 100 kids and teachers and parents, as well as the superintendent and the board members in Jefferson and educators from around the state online. And I'm thrilled to say, by the way, that we had, I believe, 3,000 or 4,000 viewers join us at various points throughout the day and that week online as well, to talk about how we can build on the fundamental pieces that you and the legislature have put into place and really ensure that the priorities for all kids are being met in our state by building on that foundation. In particular, I shared 5 streams of work that will lay out not a new path ahead, but that are critical in our mission, which really is now not just about progress in every school, but about putting our children on a level playing field with kids across our country. And I think that this has, as a mission, gone somewhat underreported in the media and somewhat undiscussed in the public, but we have a critical, not short-term, but long-term mission to ensure that the bar that we are raising for our kids is one that our schools and educators and parents understand and are capable of rising to, and that we're supporting them in doing that. And so I laid out 5 priorities that I want to discuss with you this morning in achieving that. And I appreciate those who were part of that day. First is the idea of early childhood that meets that standard. And this is not a new discussion for the board, but I reported to the audience that day that we are receiving overwhelming interest from our districts. And I think, board members, that the pilot concept is important, but understandably the pilot concept is generating more interest than simply a pilot level interest. And we're, I think, going to be faced with the good news of having more districts and regions in our state interested in unifying their early childhood system now and getting that work started than waiting a couple of years for the results of whatever policy is developed. I encouraged every district in the state to submit an application to begin unifying their early childhood systems, and I'm thrilled at the way that that is unfolding. Over the course of the next year, the proof will be in the pudding as to the degree to which that works, the degree to which it works to count every child in every district, the degree to which it works to make sure that every child is being served in a program, to train teachers on standards, to have a standard means of assessing the child's developmental and academic progress, to have standard screening tools like Mr. Wagesbeck mentioned that are applied with 3- and 4-year-olds. And so I'm excited about it. I'd be interested in a couple of weeks to see how many applications come back for the pilots. Second, we talked about a new mode of teacher support and a new mode of curriculum in our state, where as we make this extraordinary transition from standards that are Louisiana specific to standards that put our kids on a level playing field, that rather, we have a choice. And our choice is, rather than trying to hold that decision-making power central and try to tell teachers what to do from Baton Rouge, instead we should equip our teachers with the tools they need in order to make decisions for themselves. This transition is so complex. There is no way that 5 or 6 people sitting in a room in the curriculum department in Baton Rouge are going to be able to account for all of the complexities. And if we try to rely on the State Department as the source of all knowledge, or any school district central office as the source of all knowledge, we will make a mistake, because there is no way that such a small group of people could ever account for that level of complexity. We need to empower our teachers, give them the tools to allow to work collaboratively together to make these kinds of decisions as to how they learn the new standards. So we produced last week a teacher toolbox. The teacher toolbox, for the first time, unifies the state's curricular, assessment, and people development, professional development tools. It allows for assessment guides that are published now rather than 6 months from now that detail every single assessment the state administers and how exactly the shift in standards is happening. Sample assessment items so that teachers have practice items they can use to ask questions. Sample scope and sequence, sample units, sample lessons, K through 12 in English and math, as well as videos that populate our Compass library. So it is a comprehensive set of tools that we will continue to develop and populate. But maybe even more exciting, we announced the Louisiana Teacher Leader Program. 2,000 teachers from across the state who will be selected having demonstrated excellence in the classroom, as well as the ability to lead the change at their school, and will begin training so that they can be the leaders of this curriculum and assessment change, the leaders of this teacher empowerment change at the school level. April 18th and 19th, they'll be gathering for the first time at the Cajun Dome in Lafayette, and they will gather again later in the summer, and they will, over the course of this transition, be the focal point. Third, I talked about career education, and it has become very clear to me, and I know to many members of the board with whom I've spoken about this, that we're missing a big opportunity right now. And there is an economic opportunity, and there is an opportunity for young adults that we are missing for individuals and for our entire state. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of this, right now about 1 in 5 of our kids end up graduating from college. A smaller number have an associate's degree. The vast majority of our state does not have a 4-year college degree or a 2-year college degree, which means that in today's economy, where more than half of the jobs require education beyond high school, the majority of our state is not credentialed for the technical workforce that exists in today's society. And yet, our state, probably as much as any, is experiencing economic growth in technical industries. And I'll just give you one statistic that I find just amazing. In 1960, 50 some years ago, in the oil and gas business, 80% of jobs could be done with simply a high school diploma or below. Today, 60% of jobs actually require an associate's degree or above in oil and gas. So if the refinement and chemical industry is a driver of change in our state, clearly our education system has to respond to that need, among other industries. At the same time, we have a career diploma. There are only, out of 175,000 kids, only 2,400 who are on the career diploma. Only 171 of them graduated last year. So I think we have a serious divide between our career plan and the ambitions of our economy. We can change that through a career diploma that actually leads to careers, through a career diploma that actually integrates with our workforce development apparatus, which is in our technical colleges, which is in our industry, and which is in those centers of excellence that exist in our high schools. But for whatever reason right now, our duplicative and fragmented career education system is not meeting the demand, and our kids are falling through the cracks. This is an exciting project. I know our superintendents are excited about getting to work on it. We've got a lot of change to make in this regard, and this is a long-term project, but I look forward to working with you on this to keep kids on a path toward life in the American middle class. There's been a lot of discussion about special education, fourth. A lot of that discussion has been about money, but the money is a way, maybe at the highest levels, of ensuring that people are focused on the right things. Money cannot solve all problems, and the way that we distribute dollars will not solve all problems. We have to ensure that in every area, we are not creating some new big plan, but focusing our reforms on children with disabilities. That means that in every area where we have set in place policies and initiatives that intend to change outcomes positively for kids, we have to make sure we're stopping and asking the question, how exactly is this supporting parents, kids, and educators in the special needs community? Look at Compass. We've got to make sure we're providing more guidance and more intensive training for for teachers, especially of students with significant disabilities. You take our choice programs. We've got to make sure not only that we have the right policies to ensure that special needs kids are protected, but perhaps to use our choice initiatives even better to develop schools and help schools serve students with disabilities particularly well. Our accountability systems, a lot of our policies regarding curriculum and training support, all of these things we have to focus, make sure that we're not losing focus on special education and those needs to drive better outcomes, but also simply to make sure that as we make this transition toward ambitious standards, we're not losing our kids falling through between the cracks. Finally, I talked a little bit about F-rated schools. The board has had a lot of success. The state has had a lot of success. The The educators have had a lot of success. The districts have had a lot of success driving down the number of F schools. One of the things that I remember Mr. Romer spoke about when we announced the letter grades last year is that while the number of A and B schools went up, what was perhaps even at least just as, if not more encouraging, is the number of D and F schools went down. And that's great news. We still do have 63,000 kids attending F-rated schools. Part of that is the Recovery School District trying to get those F-rated schools turned around. In New Orleans, when the RSD took over schools, more than 3/4 of them were rated F. Now only 1/4 of them are rated F, but that's still too many. Where the RSD is going to be involved in parishes like East Baton Rouge, and if you just look at the numbers, other parishes, perhaps Caddo Parish, we've got to make sure those plans are strong. But we also need to be working with districts to turn around low-performing schools and to create options and alternatives to low-performing schools. You know, this board approved 12 charter schools last year. I hope they're good schools. I think they will be good schools. But still, it's 12 schools out of 1,400 in our state. We're not creating alternatives fast enough. We're not turning schools around fast enough, in spite of what have been very, very good and valiant efforts so far. I think part of that is because we've got to work with our school systems. The vast majority of kids remain, 700,000 served in our public school system. 63,000 kids are attending F-rated schools. We can build on the capacity, the great leadership capacity that's in our school systems, if we give our educators a license to step up and accept that challenge. We announced an initiative that we'll be expanding on further to, within the current state pot of money that we have, in fact reducing it by 15% last year and probably about 10% this year, to shift funds to create grants to educators who have a great plan for creating a new vision in an F-rated school, replacing an old and tired vision that's not working for kids, giving educators the license to submit a proposal, to be trained by a nationally recognized principal development program, and to end that year where we have matched the locals' money to support that educator as they then step in and take on the challenge of a new vision in a school that previously was rated F. Hopefully they'll be able to lift that rating, but more than that, this represents an attempt to build on the capacity of our 55,000 traditional public school educators so that they can step up and take on an innovative challenge within their district or even beyond their district's borders to solve this critical issue. There's obviously a lot more there, and that's a fairly cursory look at things, but I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the opportunity to talk about it and appreciate the opportunity to work with the board. Obviously, many of these initiatives have policy implications for the board at varying points, and look forward to conversation with you all about them.
The MFP, I think, being 45% of the state general fund, you know, it is a sizable amount, and it's one of the probably some of the best dollars we spend in an executive budget each year, I would imagine. I just thought it might be helpful a little bit if I want to give my impression on the budget. In the last couple of years, you know, and Superintendent just references, there's been tight times and agencies are talking about this in multiple different dialogues, and that's correct. This is my view of the budget is basically you have a state budget that's roughly cut in thirds. You've got a third that are federal dollars. You've got roughly a third that are locked up dollars, that are even locked up by Constitution or by statute over the years. And you got a third, which is discretionary general fund. And, you know, that's where we get into the discussion of what is funded in discretionary general fund. It's education, it's health care, it's incarceration, it's corrections. Those are kind of the priorities that are funded in discretionary general fund. So when you see, when the Revenue Estimating Conference comes out and says, you know, we based a budget upon predictions. Those predictions did not come to fruition. We have to come in and make a reduction. The last couple of years we've had a lot of that because, and we're no different than every other state. Any state that uses a prediction-based model has had a lot of these issues. And so when they come back and say we were wrong, you have to make a reduction, you go back to your budget and say I got to get the dollars to reduce it, and whether it's in your executive budget or your mid-year. And remember, you've got a third federal. Throw that away for this discussion because that doesn't help you for a reduction. You've got a third that's locked up. The statute in the Constitution says you can't use that money. And then you've got a third discretionary general fund, and unfortunately that's where education, health care, and corrections live. And so I think that's where we've had this debate over the years. And so I just give this analysis because for me it's helped me to understand kind of where the challenges we face here. And so you'll see things like one-time money. You'll see things like one-time for recurring. And the reality is, a lot of that one-time money it's in that middle third I was talking about. And that is a decision made by a state policymaker years ago to say, you know what, we want dollars locked up in a certain direction. And we are the policymakers at this table today. 2 years from now, there'll be different people. 10 years ago, there were different people. And so I think as a board, as a legislature, we have to always be open to saying, on any given time, are we investing dollars in the right location? And so when you see dollars put towards healthcare, education, corrections from these locked up dollars, that's where that debate comes from. I just bring that up because I wanted to make 2 key points. You know, we had this discussion yesterday. The MFP is larger today than last year. Now, that's on the student count. It's not the growth money, but it is larger today than previous years. Healthcare, corrections, they're not saying that today. They're not saying, yes, we're higher, but it's not the higher we would like. And so in a lot of ways, we're lucky for that in the education space. Now, we got challenges, and we'd like to be able to do more, but we're lucky in that sense. I just think it's important to keep that in mind. As we move through the legislative session, there will be a lot of debate on how we continue to invest in those unprotected areas. That's why earlier this morning we talked about 8G. I think we need to put a closer scrutiny on all these levels of funding, because we have to be more efficient in every single dollar we spend, not just the MFP. We don't just fund education through the MFP. There are other ways we fund education. I just think we need to have close scrutiny in that. Doesn't mean we have to dictate that from this board. I don't think we're the right people to do it. I think the districts and the educators and the parents are the right people to do it. But I think we have to scrutinize every single revenue stream. And I would encourage this board to be very active in doing that, because we have to maximize every dollar. But in the discretionary general fund pool, the fact that each year the MFP has gone up based upon student count but not through growth is a win. Because the way the budget is set up, you're so landlocked anytime you have a reduction. And the way we base our budgets based upon predictions as compared to actual numbers, we're likely to end up in that scenario each and every year while we're in an economic recession. We have all the other things that every other state's dealing with. And so, not sort of relevant, but just we've been talking about budget for about 10 hours the last 2 days. And I wanted to say just share with the board how I kind of view these items. So.